Welcome to Coach's IDP Studs and Rankings, Episode 3. I want to talk a little bit about a couple things real quick that I find interesting with the start of the season. After 2 weeks, going through drafts, doing full IDP drafts and partial IDP drafts with your offense. I find a lot of people are chasing tackles, chasing interceptions, chasing sacks. There's a handful of guys. I mean, obviously, you're going to look at wanting to grab a Micah Parsons or a TJ Watt or, a Max Crosby, some of those guys on the defensive line. Linebacker wise, you're going to want to grab, some of the better upper echelon guys. And what I find fascinating is that once, the draft starts and, guys, hit their offensive guys, they start grabbing defensive guys that are, kind of in a position where, you're going off the stats from the years before previous and, chasing those stats, with the tackles and stuff. So, there's some individuals that, this week on my rankings, as you can go over to Fantasy Holics and see my positional rankings for the defensive line, linebackers, defensive backs. And there's been some changes there, kind of off of percentages of where some individuals have lined up. They've, for an example, Micah Parsons and TJ Watt, they were linebackers, on my first two two rankings. And now they've moved over to the defensive line as defensive end because of the percentages of where they've lined up on the defense, and what type of player that, their teams are using them as. Obviously, Micah Parsons and TJ Watt can play both, but they've chosen to put them at the defensive line more of a percentage time than at linebacker. So, there were some guys, off of my, what I started out talking about, chasing, some tackles, some stats. There's some guys that this past week, week 2, that really had some good fantasy, point differential from week to week. And this week, there's a couple guys. And, if you're a fan of this team, the team that they play on, you probably know these players. But some of these guys are players that just a, average IDP player, fantasy manager or what have you, probably wouldn't know going in. So that's kind of my point of, not chasing tackles, because there's so many tackles that happen throughout the year, throughout the weeks, that, you're not real sure where they're going to all come from. Obviously the offenses are scheming against the better players. So some of the lesser NFL players are, getting good stats and helping out their teams in different directions, in different ways. Trey Brown, who's a cornerback for Seattle, he had 22.5 fantasy points, and I'm not sure he's one that was drafted very highly in IDP. So he's somebody that you could have gotten or drafted later in your drafts. Also, Jonathan Cooper, an outside linebacker for Denver, he had 16.5 fantasy points. And if I was drafting At the beginning of the season, a Denver linebacker, probably been Josie Jewell. Um, they also have a rookie named Drew Sanders, who's also starting in the inside. But there's tackles to be made by other players on the defense, and Jonathan Cooper was one of them this week. Um, it's another one. That probably wasn't drafted very highly. Was safety for the New York Giants, Jason Pinnock. He had 14.5 fantasy points this week. So, there's guys out there that, some of the guys that are really involved with the IDP and really, do their homework, may know and get some diamond in the rough per se guys. But, there's always going to be tackles out there. There's always going to be interceptions and sacks. So I would say, keep that in mind going forward when you hit the waiver wire or, next year when you get ready to draft that, after the few couple stud defensive players come off the board, I would not chase stats on the defensive side. They'll always be there. So, so again, going down a list of guys that had a really good week 2 on the defensive side. Alex Highsmith, what a play on the first play on Monday night. The tip ball and it goes right into his hands. But he had 24.4 fantasy points. He had 7 total tackles, tackle for loss, 2 quarterback hurries, a sack, interception, and fumble recovery, and a touchdown also. So Micah Parsons, 23.2. This is my guy. This is the guy that I've always like to get in drafts. He's one of those top 3, 4, or 5 guys that I want on my team. For numerous reasons. One, he's the stat monster, and then also he's just a player that I really enjoy watching play and like to have him on my rosters if possible. But he had, like I said, he had 23.2 points. He had 4 total tackles, 3 for loss, 4 quarterback hurries, 2 sacks. So he had a nice game, against their opponent this weekend. We talked a little bit about Trey Brown. He was 3rd on fantasy points with 22.5. T.J. Watt, linebacker, defensive end for Pittsburgh, 21.7. That's one of the guys that you're going to probably target early in your drafts. You want to try to pick him up early. But if he's gone, there's going to be more guys out there that are going to give you production on your defensive side. Just may not be T.J. Watt production. Donnell Hunter with the Vikings, 20.6. He had 8 total tackles, 3 tackles for loss, 3 quarterback hurries, and 3 sacks. That's a good work day. I know we talked about it, I think, last episode that, he started out a little bit late with the Vikings, but it sounds like and it looks like he's got his feet under him now, and he's ready to be a, MVP, maybe candidate or somebody to look at, throughout the season. We talked a little bit about Jonathan Cooper, the outside linebacker for Denver, 16.5. Fred Warner, linebacker, San Francisco, 16 points. He had 11 total tackles, tackle for loss, quarterback hurry, sack, pass deflection. So Bradley Chubb, Miami, 15.8. 7 total tackles, 2 for loss, 2 quarterback hurries, had a sack and a fumble recovery. Um, so down through here a little bit more, Quay Walker for the Packers, 14.5. He had 17 total tackles. That's a really good day. He was a really good player coming out of Georgia. I think he got off to a slow start. Had some penalty issues with some extracurricular stuff last year, but he's playing really, really well this year. So he might be, and I don't know, in some leagues, shallow leagues, he might still be on the waiver. So that's somebody to maybe look at to pick up. So Julian Love, safety, Seattle, 14.5. He had 13 total tackles and a fumble recovery. And that's, that many tackles coming from your safety position. That kind of falls in line of, again, what we were talking about earlier. Don't chase tackles early in your draft. There's going to always be tackles to be able to pick up for your team. A couple more here. Darren Payne, defensive tackle, Washington, had 5 total tackles, 2 tackles for loss, 3 quarterback hurries, a sack, had 13.9 points. That's somebody that, could possibly in a shallow league still be on the waiver wire. Washington's off to I believe 2-0 start, so obviously their defense is playing well. So it might be somebody to kind of research and see if that's someone that could help out your roster. And the last one here, Kenneth Murray Jr. I think he's got tremendous upside. I mean, he was a really good player coming out of college. Not sure why he hasn't taken off completely and gotten in the top echelon of linebackers, but a really good player out of Oklahoma, and he's still young, so he's got a chance to get up in there. But check your waiver wire and see, he might be out there, especially in shallow leagues. Also, 10 total tackles, 2 tackles for loss, quarterback hurry, and a sack with 13.1 points. So there's a lot of guys out there that obviously, if you're in the NFL, you're pretty darn good. But finding the right fit of what the defenses are playing and how they utilize their secondary, and if they blitz a lot from their linebackers, and how that works out. So you could really spend a lot of time diving into the IDP world. Looking for the diamonds in the rough and the guys that make or break your team, after that top echelon of players are drafted. Let's move on to some of the rankings. I talked a little bit earlier about, are moving some guys from maybe the linebacker position to the defensive line because of the percentages that they've played in those positions. Going down through here, we want to look at, obviously the guys that have moved from, we've even have some guys that are linebacker, strong safety guys like Isaiah Simmons. I'm not sure what his role is yet with the Giants, being traded from the Cardinals, but he seems like a ball hawk and he's around the ball quite a bit. It's somebody that has tremendous upside also, and is somebody that I believe could possibly start gaining that point differential to help your teams win towards the end of the season. So going down through the rankings, obviously Micah Parsons. I talk a lot about him, and I apologize if I spend a lot of time with him, but he is your typical your linebacker, defensive end. He is a guy that is just all around the ball. You've got a game plan for him. You've got to know where he's at. You've got to chip him with a running back, so that eliminates another pass receiver out in the flat area or running down the seam. So he's one of the guys that moved from linebacker to defensive end. TJ Watt, same thing. He moved also from a linebacker to defensive end. And Nick Bosa. Nick Bosa was last year's MVP on the defensive side. He's ranked third on my list this year at the defensive line, and just a tremendous player also. Max Crosby is a defensive end, with Las Vegas Raiders. Just a solid guy. Really plays, hard and makes plays all over. Myles Garrett, he's my fifth defensive end. Myles Garrett is, sometimes hit and miss. The game plan away from him, and sometimes he's a little late to get to the ball. But if they run at him or in his area, he's usually going to make that play. Chris Jones moves way up this week. Chris Jones was in my rankings a little bit lower just because he hadn't signed yet with Kansas City. But, we got to see what a difference maker he is when he's on the field for the Chiefs. And, he had a tremendous game on Sunday. So, he's going to move up as a number one defensive tackle and number 6 on my list. Josh Allen, Jacksonville defensive end, really solid player. Is always going to probably give you 3 sacks and going to give you some quarterback hurries, and he's going to make the tackles. And he's somebody that could move up a little bit more as the season goes on. Brian Burns, defensive end for the Carolina Panthers. He's kind of a stand-up defensive end, kind of a hybrid defensive end linebacker, but off the percentages, he's playing more at the defensive end spot. DeForest Buckner is my number 2 defensive tackle on the list, and he is a force for the Indianapolis Colts there in the middle. Makes tremendous plays, runs side to side, just takes up double teams, frees up his linebackers to make plays. So, Buckner that comes in at number 9. And my 10th guy this week moving up, Aiden Hutchinson, defensive end, Detroit Lions. I really think his progression from first year to this year is just tremendous. He's going to be in that conversation the next couple of years, up there with Max Crosby and Nick Bosa, TJ Watt. I firmly believe that. So, just keeping our eye on him, but I wanted to make sure I got him into my top 10. Let's talk a little bit of linebacker since there were those changes. Foyesade Okolukan. I know I was going to butcher that, but number 1 linebacker. Roquan Smith for the Baltimore Ravens, number 2. Nick Bolton for the Kansas City Chiefs, number 3. And then the guy that just keeps sneaking up for me, just really like him. I think he's going to be, a really nice linebacker for quite a while in the league, and that's T.J. Edwards of the Chicago Bears. Just watching him play He's just has a really good knack for the ball and reads it really well. Comes downhill hard and will make the plays that he needs to make. Zaire Franklin comes in at number 5 for the Colts. He's I think he's turned over and has taken over the leadership role of the Colts defense in the linebacker spot. Pete Werner, um, New Orleans Saints, just a heady linebacker, runs well, just sees it well. And you wouldn't think, by looking at him that he was, a big time NFL linebacker, but boy, he just makes plays, and his stats, get him into the top 10 at number 7. Devin White, Tampa Bay linebacker, comes in at number 8. Drew Greenlaw from San Francisco 49ers, and they've got a great linebacker core with him and Warner. But he just makes plays, all the time. So, keep your eye on him. He might be one that somebody might drop just to get somebody else in there, especially on a bye week coming up. And if he's out there on your waiver wire, definitely want to grab him. And coming in at number 10, C.J. Mosley. He's a little long in the tooth, but watching him play, he still has it. He's around the ball. He's a leader. He's a big-time linebacker, and he's my number 10 guy this week. And we'll finish up here with the defensive backs. Number 1, Derwin James Jr. I think he's just a great leader and force in the backfield for the Chargers as a safety. Makes a lot of plays, when need be. But I think just what he brings as a total package makes him the number 1 defensive back. Minkah Fitzpatrick, safety for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Just had a tremendous game the other night. Always around the ball. He's either deflecting it, intercepting it, making tackles, recovering fumbles. I mean, he is he's a guy that you're going to put in your backfield and know that you're in good hands with him. Antoine Winfield Jr., Tampa Bay safety, kind of the same mold as Minkah Fitzpatrick. I mean, yeah, he is a little bit short in stature, but he is hard hitting, knack for the ball, good run force player, is a tremendous athlete, and makes a lot of plays for the Buccaneers. Jalen Petrie dropped just a little bit for me. I know he's a little dinged up, but he's still good enough to be in the top 5 at coming in at number 4. He really solidifies the Houston backfield and makes a lot of plays there. Jaquan Brister for the Chicago Bears, safety. Talona Hufanga, San Francisco, comes in at number 6. Number 7, Kyle Duggar for the New England Patriots, and he really had a nice game the other night. Got burned on the one play, it was kind of a 2-point play, I believe, and where one of the guys, ran a short motion out, and he kind of got caught inside. But, for the most part, Kyle Duggar is one of the best defensive backs in the NFL. Coming in number 8, Jesse Bates, the third safety. We've talked quite a bit about him for the Atlanta Falcons. He's really, really a good. He just makes so many plays in the backfield quietly, and does a lot of the things really well, and his leadership shows up. And I think he, with his leadership tools and the way he plays the game, has really helped the other guys in that secondary. So I kind of value that a lot too, the leadership role, because again, the NFL players, if you're in the NFL, you're a pretty good player. There's no question about it. So, the leadership role that Bates brings, does a lot for the Atlanta Falcons. Cameron Curl, safety for Baltimore Ravens. And then finishing out the top 10, Jalen Thompson, safety for Arizona. There's a couple guys right there about the number 10 range. 10 to 13 could kind of go either way, either or. They're kind of the same players, but Jalen Thompson has always been a good athlete and always, has played well opposite Buda Baker. So that's my rankings for this week, going into week 3 here tonight. Hope you had a great week 2, and hope you have even a better week 3. If you're 0-2 or 1-1, season's not over yet. So go out there and find the diamonds in the rough and get them on your roster. I want to thank Fantasy Holics for allowing me to share some information here, and I look forward to episode 4 coming up next week. Have a great day and stay safe, and we will talk with you soon. Thank you.